Morning, everyone. Yeah, and I think when I was in middle school, I went on a mission trip with Pastor Joel. So I went to Ecuador as my first ministry experiences. So cool connection to what you guys are doing down here. Next week in Hagerstown in Chambersburg is actually our kind of family life. We call it Next Gen Sunday. So when we're preaching a message, myself and one of our campus pastors preaching a message based off of Forrest Frank. Anyone familiar with Forrest Frank? Got a few Forrest Frank fans. So I adapted that message, and we're gonna talk about Forrest Frank a little bit, some of his music, and how it pertains to really just how we live our life. My wife is back there with our two little kiddos. Last time I was here, I think maybe March or early April, I spoke. My wife was like super pregnant. Now we have a cute little 4-month-old with us. So with that, Benny, I know you just mentioned the slides. Are my slides good or? Okay. So I'm actually, if we're going to focus primarily on the song "Your Way Is Better," and we're actually kick it off by if there's any kiddos, any adults in the room that know the little dance, we'll kick it off right there. So you guys can stand to your feet, and it'll be led here. I'm not going to dance. I actually have a degree in dance, but I don't know it. Here we go. We got a couple that know it. You know it. You know it. Yeah, doing it from your feet. Yeah, you know it. Then the whole band is doing it. The whole audience is doing it. She left. Did she know it? She knows it. There we go. I you guys got it. You guys got it. So we probably most everyone has at least seen it or heard it. That Your Way Is Better. That song came out in just almost a year ago, October of last year, and it's very catchy. It's just a very small blip of the song, but it's very catchy. It has good vibes. It's good music. It was relatively popular, but then in February, some really big influencers created a dance based off of the song, and then in like weeks, it skyrocketed. Just like a few numbers. Still to this day, it has 500,000 daily streams on Spotify alone. That's a lot of times people listening to it. It has over 1 million unique videos created. Basically, 1 million of that dance exist across platforms. Because of that, it has like over 1 billion views. In May, it hit the Billboard Hot 100 and is now the longest standing Christian song on the Hot 100. It's going to week 19 on the Hot 100, ranging between like 75 and 61. And then I'm going to talk about another song later on called Lemonade. Super fun story, how that song came to exist. But when that song entered just a few weeks ago on YouTube, this Forrest Frank took off. Now has almost 2 billion unique monthly viewers on YouTube, making him in the top 1% of all artists on YouTube, surpassing artists like Drake and other artists, making him one of the most famous music specifically on YouTube. So obviously fun, obviously huge scale, really catchy, but like I want to dig into the lyrics a little bit and then how they might apply to all of the kiddos in the room and then all of us adults too, and how can we take this catchy, this kind of viral Christian trend, and how can we even apply it to our lives? So the song kicks off before it gets into Your Way Is Better, and it's super fun. Kind of the opening lyrics say, "When I was overwhelmed within, found the weight of all my sin," and then a little bit later in the opening verse it says, "Can somebody help me?" It says, "When I was overwhelmed with the weight from all my sin, when I was feeling overwhelmed, when felt like I was all alone, can somebody help me?" That's how the song starts. And I was just wondering, like, how times have we felt that? We felt really overwhelmed. So because it's actually Family Life Sunday, there's going to be a few times in this message where I'm going to give you guys like a minute to like discuss something or just have a conversation with your family or the people that are just sitting close to you. So your first question is, when was a time you were overwhelmed recently? So you just have about a minute and just whoever sitting next to you, when was a time you were overwhelmed recently? Could be funny, could be serious. And then I'll kind of just interject, and then you guys can kind of quiet down, continue going. I don't want to cut you off, but I also want to be coherent on time. So I imagine we've all had moments where we're overwhelmed. Maybe it's overwhelmed because school just started. That could be for kiddos if you're going to a new grade, or students. Maybe you're heading into middle school for the first time, or high school. I know some college students in the room. You're heading back in. Yeah, that certainly can cause some overwhelm. That can cause some anxiety. Maybe you're an adult in the room and you're just sending kids or sending a new kid, or maybe you have a new baby. I know that's something that's certainly caused some overwhelmingness within me. But you feel overwhelmed, and the question is, what do you do with it next? When you feel super overwhelmed, what is the next thing we do? And I really feel like Forrest Frank is tapping into this really important idea of like what's our way versus what's God's way. Like when we're going our own path, when we're going our own way, we say, I know what's best, I'm just going to go over here. That's usually when we start getting really overwhelmed. We say, I know what's right, I'm going to go this way. And then when we pivot, that's where we begin to see a change. So we're going to walk very quickly through one of the person in the Bible's kind of story, starting when we first introduced to him, and then taking him all the way to kind of one of the big finishes for his story. So some parts of what I'm going to read is referred to as Saul. Sometimes he's referred to as Paul. He changes his name kind of as he goes to impact his mission. But when he's Saul, in the very beginning, in the book of Acts, his job is he's a Jewish official, he's a leader, and he says his job was really to notice all these Christians, all these brand new Christians, and be like, they're not doing the right thing. They're not following the way that's been established for thousands of years. So he was going out of his way to find all the Christians, to put them in jail, to persecute them, to even kill them on certain occasions. He said, I know my way, I'm going to go out of my way to accomplish it. And he's very successful, and he's on a journey. He's literally on his way to a new city to do his thing, and he literally collapses. You could say his whole way literally falls down. Jesus meets him face to face, and he falls down. His way is broken up, and Jesus begins to have a conversation with him. Hey, your way has looked like this. You've done all of these things for so far, for these couple years. You've done this thing. But I think it is time for you to start living a different way. And Jesus begins to just talk to him, and Paul begins to realize what's happening. And we see a glimpse of that in Acts 9, 5-6. Paul says to Jesus, "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting," he replied. "Now get up and go to the city, and you will be told what you must do." God's way is better. That's the start. Is God's way is better. Jesus meets him. Paul or Saul is having this conversation, and then Jesus says, "Hey, just go to this city, and you'll be told what you must do." Sometimes we can know what the better way is. Maybe if you're a kid in the room, like you can know what it looks like to listen to your parents or to do the thing at school, but it doesn't always mean that it's easy or super clear. Maybe like my 2-year-old in the back, I could tell him, go clean his room or whatever, and he could say yes, but if he doesn't actually know how to do it, or then he's not super clear. He's like, yes, I'm following directions, but he's not super clear. Or adults in the room, yeah, I think God's telling me to do this. We can go and we can start to do it, but sometimes it's super unclear. And for Paul, it was super unclear because he actually couldn't see. If we go just a few verses down in verse 8 and 9, it says, Saul got up from the ground but when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. So they led him, the people that were with Saul, by the hand to Damascus. For 3 days he was blind, and he did not eat or drink anything. Even when we can't see the way, God's way is better. Even when it's super unclear and we're not sure where we should go, his way is still the better way. If we know exactly where we're going, but we're not going a good place, it doesn't make it a good journey. Saul knew, hey, I needed to go to the city. He was going to the city for one reason, and he starts going, and then he's told he's had to go to the city for a different reason. And he goes on the way, and even though he couldn't see, his way is still better. Even if you don't know exactly how to listen to people that are giving you good advice, it's still good advice. God's way is better even when we can't see. So another question for you guys to ask or discuss with the people sitting, your family, people sitting next to you. When was a time you had to trust someone before you knew how it would turn out? You had to trust somebody before you knew this could be a job, this could be some advice. When was the time you had to trust someone before you knew how it would turn out? Take just a couple moments. Awesome. So when Paul was struck blind, Jesus was already meeting some other people. God was already intervening with other people to meet him, to connect with him, to give him kind of his next steps, to even help him see. One of those individuals is Ananias, and I think we can kind of describe Ananias similar to maybe like you would describe like a firefighter or a first responder, where Jesus meets Ananias, or God meets Ananias. He tells Ananias exactly what you need to do. Hey, you need to meet Saul. He's coming into the city. You're going to have a conversation with him. You're going to set him up to go and to start sharing the gospel. He really talks about Saul being like the chosen instrument. Saul's the one that's going to go and he's going to change history. But Ananias knows exactly who Saul is. He knows why Saul is coming. And it's super dangerous, but he still knows it's right. Kind of like a firefighter or a police officer or somebody. Hey, it's really dangerous. Going to a burning building is not a safe thing to do, but it's still right. There's people in there that need rescued. So Ananias does. He goes and he shows up. He meets Saul. He lays hands on Saul. Saul begins to see, and then Saul begins to just start telling everyone about Jesus. Even he's so captivated by the better way, he just starts sharing it with everyone that is around. If I think about a time when I just say yes without knowing the outcome, you think about like, it's a new job, it's a new thing in church. Maybe you like never served, or you never given, or you never prayed out loud, or worshiped your hands up. You're saying yes. It's like you've seen other people do it. You know that it can be good, but you haven't done it yourself, and it's still super scary. But sometimes by just stepping up and saying, hey, I'm going to do it. There's students in the room, even kids. Like maybe you have friends that love Jesus, and they're in their schools and they're in their classes and they're doing it, and you see it, and it seems super scary because you don't know the outcome for yourself. But when you step into it, it can be really great. Even when we can't see it, God is still going to show up. Later on, so Paul goes, he meets Ananias, and then later on he meets an individual called Barnabas. Barnabas' name means encourager. And that's really all Barnabas is. He's just somebody who speaks into. You don't hear about Barnabas a lot, but Barnabas is like the person who's always there to encourage, to lift up. I think probably many of us can think of somebody who's just like always there for us, always speaking life, always encouraging, always lifting us up. And it's when Barnabas meets Saul that Barnabas begins to just empower him, teach him, lead him. And then later on in Acts chapter 9, they're actually Barnabas brings Paul, and they're like in front of the rest of the apostles, the rest of the leaders, and they're like, none of them want Saul there. None of them feel like Saul should be a part. They all know Saul's done. And then Barnabas is the one that stands up and explains who Saul is and begins to be this encourager that champions him. So you guys can just raise your hands on this one, but who's ever had somebody cheer for you or stand up for you when nobody else would? Like, you ever had a moment where like no one's cheering you on, and then somebody else cheers you on? Absolutely. I think that's one of the most powerful things. When nobody else is cheering you on, you have one person that says, yeah, I'm here for you. I'm going to cheer you on. I'm going to show up for you. That's who Barnabas was for Saul. It's who all of us can be for somebody else. Certainly, if you're a parent in the room, you're probably already doing this, but chip in, speak it into your kids, encourage it in your kids. One of my favorite things every night. Recently, it used to be my wife. When my wife got to every night just kind of speak encouragement over our son. The last week, he's like, Dad. So I that, and selfishly, I'm like, oh, it's so cool. I get to be the one that Alex gets to pray over and kind of encourage and speak it into him. We always make sure he still says good night to my wife beforehand. But there's people that you know that you think know that you love them, that you encourage them, but there's something really powerful about saying it. Man, there's people even in this room that you think highly of, that you feel like have potential, you feel like God's calling into something. That you can act like it, but when you actually speak it, it really changes it. So my encouragement is like, hey, who do you just need to speak some encouragement into? Barnabas and Saul separate for a season, and then they come back a few years later. Barnabas actually goes to find Paul in chapter 11. So in chapter 11, 25 to 26. It says, then Barnabas went to Tarshish to look for Saul, and when he found him, he brought him to Antioch. So for a whole year, Barnabas and Saul met with the church and taught great numbers of people. The disciples were first called Christians at Antioch. Sometimes we can't see it in ourselves, but other people can see it in us. Barnabas goes out of his way. He finds Saul. He brings them. They get trained. They work together. The first called Christians, and then Saul gets to be one of the first ones that's actually sent out on mission after that. So some of you need to start, you're seeing God work in somebody else. You need to start speaking it into them, because you could have this moment where there's going to be a pivot in somebody's life. Really a pivot, like if you want to change the world, start with one person. Who's one person you can encourage because of what Barnabas did. Our world is different. Part of the reason why we're here today is because of what Barnabas did. To experience the better way, never walk alone. That's how we could put it. To experience the better way, never walk alone. I can honestly say that I kind of experienced a Paul moment. When I first, kind of my personal salvation was a moment where I was in a church service, and I was just like calling out to God. I grew up in the church, but I was just calling out to God, like, God, if you're real, show up, and like give me both evidence that you're here and then clear direction going forward. And I can't fully describe the moment, but it was very clearly that where I just like felt God speak to me. I was 13 at the time, right about the time we went on the missions trip, and it was a super cool moment where, like, after that, I got connected to my youth pastor and other people, and I started doing ministry. I had opportunity to like preach in our youth group, and I was like still in high school, and all these cool opportunities. But like, I never really sought out like one person to walk with me and go on a journey together. No one really ever identified. It was just like all these little moments. But then there was one person later on, kind of towards the end of high school, that sought me out. And he did a Lifehouse where we're at, we do this like, I see in you. This idea of like, hey, I see this thing in you. And he had this conversation with me, and it's like, hey, what do you want to do about it? What's the greatest need you see, and then what's one thing you can do? And I began to have a conversation where we met together like every week. And we just started unpacking, hey, this is the thing, and this is what we're going to do about it. This is the thing, and what we're going to do about it. But it all started with one person speaking encouragement, saying, hey, I want to walk alongside you wherever you are in your life. You're a kid, you're a student, you're an adult. All of us should have mentors, should have accountability partners, have people that say, hey, I'm going to do life with this person. I'm going to walk life out with this person. The better way is both immediate and ongoing. It's both immediate and ongoing. So Acts 9 happens, Saul meets Jesus, he starts having this transformation, and then we go all the way to Acts 13. That's when the first mission kind of commissioning happens, where they go and they start living on mission. One of the first 3 mission trips that Paul leads to starting churches all across the region. Between those two, in our Bible, it's 4 chapters. You could read it in just a few minutes. But in time, it's like 10 or 12 years. It's a lot of time between when Paul meets Jesus and when he's sent on mission fully. Sometimes the immediate is God's way is better, is that we experience salvation, that the overwhelming, that the chaos, that when we don't know exactly where to go and it's all blind and it's kind of murky, that's the immediate, where God shows up. He gives life to the things that feel dark. When he cleanses our sin, he gives us hope. That's the immediate, that's the love. But then the ongoing is the fact that it's a journey to get where God's taking us. To get to the best way, it's a journey where we have to do it with other people. We have to go even though it's scary, we can't see, we have to just keep going. It's both immediate and ongoing. If you throw it back to Forrest Frank, before Forrest Frank was Forrest Frank, he was a part of a band, Surface. I don't know if anyone's heard Surface. They're probably Sunday Best is probably their most famous song. I mean, by the charts, it's definitely the most famous song. Sheesh, which is down here, that's probably my son's favorite song. He says, play Sheesh. That's all he knows, is just the Sheesh part. But this is a band based out of California. Forrest Frank and then 2 other guys were a part of this band just a couple years ago. It's not even that old of a band. But this was like a secular band. All the music is clean. Some of their songs even mentioned Jesus or God, but it was definitely a secular band. And Forrest Frank tells this story, kind of his pivot moment was he was invited to play a wedding. He shows up, plays the wedding, and said, hey, before you play Surfaces, can you play like these 3 worship songs? So he grew up in the church. His grandfather actually like toured with Billy Graham. So he's familiar with church, but he never played on a youth band, never played on a Sunday, never sung a worship song in a platform. And he's at this wedding, and he's just singing these worship songs. There's the first moment where he felt like a conduit, whereas like not only people, Surfaces, everyone's there to watch him. Singing worship, he's just there to glorify God. He's leading a room. That's the ongoing part. When we turn our life, when we can sacrifice our preference for God's worship. When you say, hey, I'm going to turn everything I'm having. I was doing this one thing was good, but now I'm going to do this thing that's worship. I'm going to turn my job, I'm going to turn my day in school, I'm going to turn the way I grandparent, I'm going to turn everything into worship. That's the ongoing. When we worship, that's the best way ever. If we jump to, I mentioned the song Lemonade. So the Lemonade song comes out of a joke. There's a band called The Figs, a Christian like indie folk band that does these little reels to like how to be this band. And then they do a little thing and they try to become another band. So they did it for Forrest Frank and they made this little video here.
Step 1, mega catchy, tight range. Step 2, switches it up a lot, but usually electric guitar, keys, big drum, and then the sound effects. Step 3, Jesus and vibes. And that's all we got with the Figs. Follow and comment who you next time. You do not make music like this. Oh, yeah, go. The love guys got me clean. Both sides, Lord, got me in the deep. Don't mind, but now I'm out here feeling free. Won't lie, I'm sitting in the shade. I gave me some lemons, but my Jesus, he be making them.
That's Lemonade by The Figs. So they have about 30,000 followers on Instagram. Their most popular video on Instagram had like just under 1 million views. This song, that video, I think it's like 23 million views at this point, and like thousands of comments that are just at Forrest Frank. Forrest Frank, when's this coming out? There's thousands of them. So Forrest Frank sees this video. And he had an opportunity at that video of seeing it to like do a lot of things. He could have seen it and just been like, oh, great job. He could have gotten upset, like, hey, why are you making fun of me? He could have congratulated them, or he could have said, hey, let's actually do this. That's what he did, about 5 videos. If you go back on their page or on Forrest Frank's page, and you can see the whole story unfold. Where back and forward, they're writing this song. You know, Forrest says, hey, what's the verse? Then they say, what's the chorus? And then they in about a week, they write this entire song, and they release it. It actually comes out. He broke his back, Forrest Frank did, and this song came out of him breaking his back, and then it unfolds, and they release it in like about a week. And when they release it, it takes off. Within hours, it's number 1 on all platforms. Like all platforms, all genres, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. It hits the Billboard Hot 100 week 1, and it's stayed in the top 10 for like audios on like all these platforms. Super cool, but what's really cool, and what I want to hone in on, is the fact that he did it. Forrest Frank has about like 4 million monthly listeners. The Figs have like 30,000. That's like 0.4% the popularity, if you wanted to do the math. And he said, let's do this together. Because of it, their monthly popularity has increased by over 3 million. They've gained like 90,000 followers. It's changed their career. And I think, what if the greatest accomplishments that we have are not the Better Way story we have, but the Better Way story we speak into somebody else? Or what if the best story any one of us could be a part of is not what we do, but what God does through us for somebody else? And this is true. Like if you're a kid in the room, like maybe you can do this even right now. Like you have a classmate, you just start encouraging them. You start sitting with them at lunch. You just start maybe like it's a new school year. There's a new kid in your class. Say, I'm going to sit with this kid. I'm going to make friends with this kid. You could change that kid's life. You could make a new friend. Students, absolutely, same thing. You know, our sports team. Hey, I'm going to go on my way. I'm going to encourage this person. The Better Way story cannot be what happens in your life, what happens through your life for somebody else. You see, Paul had Barnabas encouraging, speaking into him for 10 years. He's doing this. Paul was so transformed by what Barnabas did for him that he goes and finds Timothy. Timothy's this young guy who loves Jesus. It says in one of the letters written to Timothy that his mother and his grandmother were just like powerhouses for the faith that just loved Jesus and showed Timothy what it looked like to follow Jesus. So Paul finds him and says, hey, I'm just going to encourage you. I'm going to speak into you. I'm going to point you in the right direction. And then I'm going to give you a big platform. I'm I'll give you this whole region of churches, and you're going to lead them. And then he goes and he starts doing it. It starts transforming not only Paul's life, but then Timothy's life. Another question, or kind of our last question for you guys to kind of consider with the people sitting next to you, is this: you're thinking about one person you can encourage this week, and then just share their name with somebody near you. So this could be somebody, this could be a family member, this could be somebody you know from school, this could be a coworker, but who's somebody you can encourage this week, and then you can just share their first name. And we're going to do something with that during our response in just a little bit. So it has to be someone you have a likelihood of seeing this week. Would be. We'll circle back to those names a little bit. So if you're still thinking, we'll circle back in just a little bit. But think about that name, because like one name is how it starts. You can think this is great. Oh man, I'd love to encourage somebody. I would love for my story to be the thing for somebody else's story. But when we actually put an action to it, it's more likely to actually happen. In one of the letters that Paul writes to Timothy, he starts talking about like this like good deposit. So in just one verse, in 2 Timothy 1:14, it says, "Guard the good deposit that was entrusted to you. Guard it with the help of the Holy Spirit who lives in us." He's saying, hey, your parents, your grandparent, they're speaking into this. You have this good deposit. You have all of this stuff inside of you. Guard it and let the Holy Spirit begin to use it. The better way is meant to be shared. The better way is meant to be shared. It's not meant to just stay in us. It's not meant to just stay. If we want to see like a movement in Winchester and the surrounding areas, we want to see a movement on every school campus. It happens when you experience the better way, but then you share it with somebody else. The better way is first meant to be experienced, though. So like if you're still like, man, this sounds really good, but you still feel like you're in a little bit of a darkness, you still feel really overwhelmed, you're still not exactly sure, the very first step is that you just experience the better way, that it's shared first with you. So just like a brief moment to be like, man, if that is you, if you're in this room, like this all sounds really good, but my world still feels a little dark, still feels a little overwhelmed, still feels really unsure. There's deadlines, there's things that I just don't really understand. If you're right there, Jesus, he wanted to share the better way so much that he came and lived this amazing life. He's like flipping every idea, every concept, pointing everything back to what it looks like to experience the better way, to the point that individuals like Saul put him to death. That he gives his own life away so that we could experience the better way. That we can go from all of our mess, and then because Jesus came back to life, that we can walk into the best way. That we can experience the best way personally and to begin to change our life. And we might make that decision. Yeah, I want to move from all this mess to what God has. I want to move from making bad choices to making good choices. I'm overwhelmed by the weight of my sin. I want to be forgiven and live right. You make that decision. Jesus cleanses you and make you right. And you do that, and it might still be a little blinding. But even when we can't see it, it's still the better way. It's still the better way. It's immediate. God forgives you, loves you, and gives you a new life. But then it's ongoing. It's a journey. So don't lose faith. Don't get tired because there's something good that's happening. There's a story happening in your life, but then a story that can be shared and can impact other people's life. I'll invite Crystal back up. But then for everyone else, the better way is meant to be shared. And what does that look like for you? How can you share the better way? How can you maybe serve here at the church in a way they haven't served before? How can you give as a family in a way that you haven't given before? How can you share just the way you live your life with the people that are in your class, that are at your work, that you're living your life in a way that says, I'm on a journey. I'm spending my whole life getting closer to Jesus, going to the better way of Jesus. But as I do that, I'm going to bring other people along. I sometimes use this idea that like our life is a track, but does the rail lead other people to Jesus? If our life is a track, does the rail lead other people to Jesus? And what can you do this week to begin to do that? How can you encourage somebody? How can you love somebody? How can you turn a moment that maybe would be a little bit pressure-inducing into a worship moment, like Pastor Joel was talking about earlier? And when we do that, we share it. It magnifies. Little pockets of love, little pockets of the better way begin to pop up at this school, at this workplace, at this coffee shop, and you begin to just see this spread of the better way. People's life begin to be transformed. So we're going to go into our response time. And for families, how can you guys respond together? Yeah, earlier I said you give a name. I'd love, if you did give a name, to just spend a little bit of time with the person sitting next to you and just pray for that name. Pray that you actually have the opportunity to encourage that person, to speak life into them, that it begin to be a moment that changes that person's life or impacts them in a significant way. But then we have communion. Man, this visual representation of Jesus saying, I'm going to give everything so you can experience the better way. That I'm going to break my body. My blood's going to pour out so that you can experience the better way. Man, explaining that, doing that together with a family is the best way. It's so powerful, such a powerful opportunity. Giving is another incredible opportunity. It says, hey, I'm willing to forfeit my preference. Having this money, hitting these goals, doing these things, I'm going to forfeit that because I'm going to worship through giving. Again, as a family, if you do that together, maybe, it's friends, it's family, you're doing that together, I say, hey, I'm going to show what it looks like to give. There's even research right now that says, this kind of silent giver term is being thrown around, and it's this idea that, my generation, Gen Z, and then even obviously younger, Gen Alpha, and even Gen Beta, a couple of them in the room, are not seeing people give. And because they're not seeing it, because giving online and things, which is an amazing tool, I definitely do that. But because they're not seeing it, they're not aware that it's happening and that it's impacting their ability to be generous. Today, you have the opportunity. Hey, I want to give as a family so I can begin to set a worship mentality that my kids get to see and be a part of such a powerful moment. So just take your time. I've heard you first. If you said a name, pray that name out loud to the person that you shared it with. But then respond anyway. You come up to the altar, just worship together, take communion, give. What better way story is God doing in your life? And then how can you share that with others? God, we thank you so much just for who you are. That you are the best way, that you made a way so that we could experience the better way that you have for each one of us, God. God, I pray that anyone that's making the decision today, that they would come close to you, that they would share it with somebody that they're with today, and then they would be able to worship alongside it. God, even when it's blind, even when it's scary, would we have the faith to say, I know it's both immediate and it's ongoing. And then as we begin to walk it out, would we begin to share it with other people and see these pockets, these movements of your better way story? Would you be in this response moment and the steps and the worship that we have together as this family? Amen. Go ahead and respond as you feel led.